the system that worked best when nobody looked. Some systems perform most efficiently in the absence of attention, not because they are flawed, but because scrutiny changes behavior. London built financial structures that thrive quietly. They operated smoothly when left alone, and grew powerful outside public focus. This matters today because many of the most influential mechanisms still function beyond everyday visibility. They shape outcomes without attracting notice. Early financial systems were public by necessity. Markets gathered physically. Information spread socially. Attention was unavoidable. As finance scaled, visibility became optional. Complexity allowed activity to disperse. Operations moved behind institutional walls. This separation created efficiency. Decisions were faster. Negotiations quieter. Adjustments subtle. The system learned to function without explanation, not secretly, but privately. Participants valued discretion. Reduced visibility, limited interference. Fewer observers meant fewer reactions. This allowed experimentation. New instruments evolved without immediate judgment. Structures adapted without public pressure. Over time, quiet operation became an advantage. Markets responded less to headlines. Institutions adjusted positions without signaling intent. But reduced attention also altered accountability. When fewer people look, fewer questions are asked. The system began optimizing for invisibility, not to deceive, but to avoid disruption. Because attention introduces noise. Noise introduces volatility, and volatility interrupts flow. This logic shaped behavior subtly. If something worked unseen, it was left untouched. And as long as outcomes appeared stable, the absence of attention felt justified. That was a condition under which the system thrived. Quietly, efficiently, unexamined. But systems that depend on silence inherit a fragile strength because attention eventually returns. As the system grew comfortable without attention, it adapted to that condition. Processes assumed discretion. Responses assumed privacy. Decisions were optimized for internal audiences, not for explanation, not for public understanding. This created speed. Internal signals mattered more than external perception. Institutions adjusted before markets noticed, but operating unseen changed incentives. Success was measured by smooth continuation, not by transparency. Feedback loops narrowed. Warnings circulated internally, if at all, because attention complicates response. It invites debate. It slows execution. The system learned to avoid that friction. Quiet fixes replaced visible corrections. Adjustments happened before questions formed. This worked during calm periods. Markets remained orderly. Confidence persisted. But invisibility also masked accumulation. Small issues were resolved locally. Patterns were not examined globally. No single observer saw repetition. Each incident felt isolated. Attention would have connected these signals, but attention was absent. Institutions trusted their ability to manage internally, and for a long time, they were right. This reinforced belief. If problems could be handled quietly, there was no need for exposure. But silence narrowed resilience. Without scrutiny, assumptions went untested. Without challenge, structures hardened. The system became dependent on being left alone, not because it was weak, but because it was tuned to that environment. Dependence creates vulnerability. If conditions change, performance degrades quickly. Attention was not a threat. It was a missing input. And when it finally returned, it returned suddenly. Because systems that avoid attention rarely notice it approaching. When attention finally arrived, it arrived unevenly. Questions surfaced without context. Scrutiny focused on outcomes, not structure. The system was not prepared for explanation. It had optimized for action, not narration. Processes that worked smoothly in silence appeared confusing under examination. Decisions lacked visible rationale. Timelines felt opaque. This triggered suspicion, not because failure was immediate, but because understanding was absent. Markets began reacting to visibility itself. Announcements moved prices. Disclosures created volatility. Attention became a force. Institutions struggled to adjust. Internal logic did not translate externally. What felt controlled inside looked chaotic from outside. The return of attention altered behavior instantly. Decisions slowed. Hedging increased. Positions shifted defensively. Because scrutiny changes incentives, actions must be justified. Justification exposes assumption. Assumptions that had never been questioned were now examined publicly. Some held, others did not. The system faced a paradox. It had functioned well without attention, but could not function well under it. This revealed a structural weakness. Resilience had been internal. Legitimacy had not. Attention demanded coherence, not just performance, not just stability. Markets wanted explanation. They wanted narrative alignment. They wanted to know why outcomes occurred. The system had answers, but they were fragmented. Without a shared explanation, confidence eroded faster than performance. This exposed a deeper truth. Systems that thrive unseen must eventually explain themselves. If they cannot, their strength becomes suspect. Attention did not create instability. It revealed fragility, and fragility behaves differently when observed. Because once people start looking, silence is no longer neutral. It becomes a signal. When the system adjusted to attention, it changed permanently, not because attention demanded perfection, but because it demanded explanation. Structures that survived learned to translate action into meaning. They slowed where necessary. They clarified assumptions. They exposed mechanisms before pressure forced them to. The lesson was not that invisibility is wrong. Some processes require privacy. Some adjustments work best quietly. The lesson was balance. A system cannot depend on being unseen because attention is inevitable. Markets do not only price outcomes, they price understanding. They react not just to results, but to the stories that explain them. London's financial architecture evolved again, not toward constant exposure, but toward explainability under scrutiny. Quiet efficiency remained valuable, but it was no longer sufficient. Systems that endure can operate unseen and withstand being seen. They do not collapse when questions arise. They do not rely on silence to function, because silence is temporary. Attention is cyclical. What matters is whether a system can absorb both, calm and scrutiny, privacy and explanation. The most resilient structures today are not those that hide best. They are those that can speak clearly when required. That clarity is not weakness. It is strength under observation. And that is the difference between a system that survives quietly and one that endures visibly. The system